Here we are. It is Saturday morning,
Saturday morning.
9 a.m. on the East Coast. Earlier for our West Coast friends. It's
Yes.
6
yes.
a.m. if you're on the West Coast.
Good morning, sunshine.
But good morning. Woody says that every morning to Emma.
Right, our daughter.
Yes.
Good morning, sunshine.
Good morning, sunshine. I don't know why, but I'm guessing that when she's older, she's going to tell everyone that my mother said that to me every morning. It's probably your mother said it to you every morning.
Maybe.
That could be what it is.
Mm-mm.
It could be what it is. But either ways, we're excited to be here this morning. This is our webinar for basically how to start, run, get started in, be better at the short-term rental game. John and Wendy Williams here from the Short-Term Rental Authority. I almost said, what comes right after that?
Oh, you're the authority on all things short-term rental related.
She wasn't in the groove.
No, well, we're not really doing a podcast.
Right. But that's what came to mind, right? Was that whole, I'm so used to hearing it
Right.
that I almost just said that. But here we are. First of all, first things first, you'll see on the bottom of the screen there, there's a link for a workbook. So we put together a workbook so you can follow along and fill it in. I've got a copy of it right here. It looks something like this. And it's got a place for you to kind of take notes and follow along with what we're doing. We do have some giveaways. So if you stick around and at the end, we'll tell you what to do about those giveaways. But basically, it's going to be share this video wherever you're watching it and tag us in it. And once we see that, we'll enter you for a chance to win. So you can take your pick. But we have design consultations available. We have
listing audits.
A listing audit available.
If you already have a short-term rental.
If you already have a short-term rental up.
And a pricing strategy.
Yep, pricing strategy is one of the things that we have up there.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever you like, we'd like to help you and get you situated. So there we go. So let's get right into it. So the very first thing, and we're just going to kind of start at the beginning, and we're going to walk you through the entire thing. You should have enough by the time you get to the end of this that you should be able to walk away and actually go start this business. And that's the most important part to any business, is actually getting started. But a lot of times it's, how do we get started and what mindset do we need to have and all those kind of things. So we're actually going to start there.
Right. Because you always, whenever you're learning something new, we always start with mindset.
Yes. We always start with mindset. So I'm gonna bring up some visuals here for you.
So the first thing that we're going to be talking about is setting a really great foundation, right? It's like building a house.
It is, yes.
That we can use that as a comparison, right? So think of it as if you were building a house. You always lay the foundation first, right? So this is what we're going to be doing, and we're going to be covering 3 really important mind shift changes that most people need to make, right? Because we've been coaching people for a long time now, and we've discovered that most people come into this business with certain mindsets already, and there are some shifts, some perspective shifts, if you will, that a lot of people just need to make and just think about it a little bit differently, right? Because we all have these preconceived notions of what a short-term rental or Airbnb business is. So let's go through those mindset shifts, and there are 3 of them that we are going to be talking about, right?
Right, and that's what you're going to see here. Basically, this is part 1, foundations and mindset. And Wendy and I are big fans of The Matrix.
Oh, love that movie.
So you might see some Matrix themed graphics in the presentation, but that's basically what this first slide is all about. It's shifting your perspective And the perspective often is the key to success. And it certainly is in this business as well. Right. So let me go to the next one here. And this really is the secret sauce. It's the secret sauce to all of it. The secret sauce is understanding what business you're in, right? And more importantly, don't skip this section. Don't skip this step, because understanding what business you're in is the fundamental key to your success. And as Wendy said, more than likely you have preconceived notions of what this business really is. So we invite you to, empty your cup, dump out everything you think you know about this business so that we can help you fill that cup with what we were about to share with you. So ready for the first one? Here's the first big one. And Wendy alluded to it.
This is a big one.
Perspective shift number one. Common belief is this is an Airbnb business. And the reality is it's a short-term rental business, right? And you might say, well, what difference does that make, John? What difference does that make, Wendy? I say Airbnb because that's what everybody knows, right? And they won't know what I'm doing if I say short-term rental business, right? But the question is, frankly, what is an Airbnb?
That's a really great question.
What is an Airbnb?
What exactly is an Airbnb?
And part of the problem is it depends on who you ask, which is what this slide is all about. Some people think vacation rental, right? Some people think, oh, well, that's the place I stay when I travel the world, right? And beyond that, it could be a tent. It could be an RV.
A yurt.
It could be a room.
A tree house.
A tree house is a good one. I kind of want to stay in a tree house. I haven't done that.
Tiny home.
A tiny home.
Yeah.
Right. So when you think about it, there really is no such thing, but we tend to use these things as verbs. And that's just what I'm saying. There literally is no such thing as an Airbnb. And I thought this picture was rather humorous. It kind of looks like what our daughter looks like when she wakes up.
Right.
So this is our morning sunshine picture. So the thing to realize about Airbnb is it is a marketing channel.
Right.
It is one of many. In fact, there are others that you've probably heard of. There's HomeAway, there's Booking.com, Vrbo. In fact, we even have our own direct booking website, right? So it's a place to find a short-term rental, but a short-term rental is not an Airbnb. It's simply a marketing channel. And once you realize that, and in fact, this slide is showing those different places. It's saying, hey, these customers are coming from these different platforms, but no matter where they come from, I'm always looking to add them to our personal database. So if we get a customer from, say, an Airbnb off of that marketing channel, then the first thing we're going to do is place them in our database so that when they come back, they're no longer Airbnb's customer. They're actually our customer, right? So that's the first perspective shift. This is Airbnb. Stop using that. It's not a verb.
Right. That's why we never say, I have an Airbnb business.
Yes. And that's important, because if you don't get that out of your head, you'll start confusing who's coming with where they're coming from. And it's very important to understand that. So perspective shift number two, common belief is that, hey, this is real estate. This is the real estate business. It's simply another strategy in the real estate business. What we would propose to you is this is actually a completely separate business from real estate. It happens to occur in a piece of real estate, but it is not real estate in and of itself. In fact, one of the analogies I like to use most is this is way, way more like the restaurant business.
That's a really good analogy.
It's the hospitality business.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go to a restaurant, the reason you go there, or the reason you go back, is because the food was good, the service was good, they had the type of food you were craving, right? So
you had a really good experience.
You had a really good experience.
It was the experience.
And the only real thing about the real estate is it clean? And is it in a location that makes sense for that type of restaurant, right? So you can say, hey, I have an Italian restaurant, but is it that place in the mall that sells the Sbarro, right? Mm-hmm. That's Italian, I guess.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess.
Is it, white table service would be the other
Right.
side of that, like a place you go sit down and they, bring you a 5-course meal, right?
Right.
That's also Italian. But in neither one of those cases does the real estate, does it matter that it's in a mall? Yes, because that's where that belongs. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But that's just important to understand that actually you're building a hospitality business is what you're doing. And that's what is represented here in this slide most of the time. Because we got started in real estate back in 2016, doing fix and flips, believe it or not. And so we've done a lot of different real estate, and we tend to have that circle of friends. We have a lot of real estate investors that are friends, and what I see mostly from people that come from the real estate world, especially, is they start looking like this guy on the left over here, where I'm really looking at, hey, I could get more rent if I made this thing into a short-term rental.
Right. If I turned it into
a
Airbnb.
short-term rental.
Mhm.
And that's no different than saying, hey, I own this strip mall, but if I put a Chinese restaurant in one of my spaces, I would make more rent. And nobody would say that, because you would realize, oh, I'm actually running a Chinese restaurant, going back to perspective number 2. And do I even know how to run a Chinese restaurant? And I realized that the success of the Chinese restaurant isn't really extra rent for the space. The space still rents for what it rents for. I'm just now running a restaurant in it, right? And so what this lady on the right over here is represents perhaps a more appropriate mindset when going into this business. And what she's doing is she's thinking about, who is my customer, right? She's thinking about, not, will this property be a good short-term rental? That's a question we get asked a lot. But she's thinking, who is my customer? What kind of restaurant, in the analogy, am I starting? And then where would that restaurant be best served, right? So that's that perspective shift. Here's number 3. This is a big one. Commonly believe you need to own the real estate. We believed that when we got started.
We did.
In fact, we got started on our journey in our own home, in the basement of that home, and it was fully furnished, and we
Fully finished.
Finished.
Like was finished
Yes.
off, right?
and then it was furnished as well, right?
Well, we already had stuff down there because we were using the space as a movie theater type experience.
Correct. And then we, long story short, put a bed down there and a coffee pot and
At a table.
and listed it on one of those marketing channels that we talked about earlier. And that's when we realized, hey, this is a great business to be in, and we really enjoy being in the hospitality business, right? But our whole problem was, how do we get more basements, and how do we acquire all this real estate? Because we really would like to have 10 of these things. And what we realized was, we didn't need to own the real estate. What we needed was control of the real estate, much like that restaurant. They need a space to put their restaurant in. And so we decided, oh, well, how many places can we rent? All of them. Right. And that significantly reduced the barrier of entry for us. And you can do the same. So don't get caught up in, hey, I've got to go buy these pieces of real estate. You don't, especially to start. You can simply rent the space you need, as long as it's appropriate for the restaurant type or the customer type that you're looking to serve. And then off you go, right? So that's a common thing. And going back to the analogy before, it's really no different than most of the businesses you're probably familiar with doing business with, at least in the retail world. Like, so your Army Navy store, your gym, your restaurant,
all those things in the strip mall.
Yeah, even your grocery store, they likely rent those spaces. And it really has nothing to do with the profitability of the restaurant, whether they rent or own it. It's really about the quality of the food, the service that they're providing, and all those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get off of
We're going to come back to
this
at the very end,
a little bit later. Okay.
Right.
So that's section 1. That's those 3 mindset shifts in there. There's space in there to write those down, so you don't forget them. I'm going to let Wendy talk about. We're going to move to section 2 now in the workbook, and I'm going to let Wendy go. Because I feel like Wendy needs to go. It's her turn.
Well, if that's the case, then I gotta put my glasses on.
Oh, I see. I see.
So now that you have a really great foundation and you just need to change your perspective just a little bit and think about these three different things that we just talked about in just a little bit different way, right? So now that you've done that, let's really get into it. And the first step that you need to make, and this is the secret sauce. What we are just about to uncover for you is the secret sauce, the number one thing that you really need to consider and really think about if you are looking to start a short-term rental business is who is your customer? And we've talked about that in one of the perspective shifts already a little bit, but let's really talk about this because doing this and thinking about this first is going to answer all the other questions that you have. I mean, every single one. So let's talk about identifying your target customer. And the question that you need to ask yourself is, who do you want to serve? And those are very key words. Who do you as the business owner, right? Because you are starting a business. This is a business. This is the hospitality business. Your short-term rental business is what about you as a business owner? Who would you be happy to serve? Who do you want to serve? When you laid your head down in the pillow at night, you're going to say to yourself, man, I am so grateful that I get to serve blah, blah, blah. That's the way to think about it. Because if you really enjoy serving this customer, it will come across in everything that you do in your business, in what you put inside the unit, in the way that you talk to your customers, everything that you do, how you train your team members that you bring on, because you're not going to be doing this yourself, right? Everything that you do in your business is going to center around this whole concept of who are you serving. And a lot of people get into this business thinking, well, it's just vacation rentals. That's what an Airbnb is, but that's just one. That's just one customer that you can serve. And it's a very broad customer, right? Because there are all different types of vacation rentals. We live in close to Charlotte, North Carolina. We can go 2 hours east and hit the coast. That's a totally separate business than going 2 hours west and hitting the mountains, right? So really delving down into who are you going to be serving, that is the secret sauce in this business. There are over 45 different use cases for short-term rentals. So let's talk about that. We actually have a copy of a client type matrix here, but let's talk about all the different customer types that there are.
Right, and that's in the workbook, by the way. So
Yeah, in the
that's
workbook
down at the
is.
bottom. If you haven't gone there and gotten the workbook, grab the workbook because it does have links in it as well to some of these resources that, well, for example, Wendy just mentioned.
So let's talk about this a little bit. So because there's lots of different categories, but we need to get really specific when we're talking about our customer. So one of the things that we tell our coaching clients to do is, think about who you are as a traveler, right? Because if you are, if you serve who you are as a traveler, you're really going to be able to identify with that traveler. And I think that's really key here is being able to identify with your customer. And so let's talk about what the customer type that we chose. We chose families with children and pets. And we chose that avatar because that's who we are. We have when the kids were little, it was tough finding a place for children where we didn't have to carry around the pack and play, for example. We didn't have to carry around the high chair. We didn't
Yeah,
have
try
to.
going through an airport with that.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, you just leave it at home, basically, is what you
babies
do.
come with so much stuff already.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be great if we didn't have to carry around all this stuff, right? And that's what we looked for when we were traveling, and it was really hard to find. So,
And not to mention the 2 large animals
oh
that we
my
have,
gosh, we've
right?
got 2 100-pound labs. I mean, how many spaces take large dogs?
Not many.
Not
I
many.
remember sneaking them into
To a
was
hotel.
it a Stonebridge Suites or
Something
something
like
like
that,
that?
right?
Where they technically
We
were
did.
pet friendly, but not
And it was really
big
hard to sneak in
pet friendly. So
100-pound
we had to
labs.
come in the side door with them,
Right.
and then you're in a hotel room with like
It's
2
like
kids and
this
these big dogs.
big,
Yeah,
right?
not fun.
Yeah, it wasn't. It really wasn't. So that's why we chose that avatar is because that's who we are. And now I know exactly what that customer wants because I am that customer.
Yeah, and not only that, it tells you where to market, right? It tells you where to put the property, like where should I, what location do I need?
Yep.
Well, where do those people want to be? Right? That's the question you got to answer. It tells you what level of place are you? In other words, are
Hmm.
you budget?
Right.
Are you a mid-scale place? Are you a high-end place? Right? So beyond this broad category of families with children and pets, I also want to know, what age are these people, for example? What's their income level, for example? Like here's one of the categories that you can serve. And I hear a lot of people say, hey, I'm going to go serve this. They'll say, I serve business travelers that come to the area. Well, that's vague, meaning because I'm going to ask you, well, that's a great start. That's category. But are you serving the CEO of the company? Or are you serving the guy that just graduated and got his first sales job? Because those are 2 different avatars that are both business travelers, right? And this is one of the things, I think the reason that people they're almost afraid to niche down.
Right.
And the reason they're afraid to do it is because they're afraid that if they get too niche, then they won't get enough business and they won't be able to keep it rented.
When in reality, it's the exact
It's the
opposite.
exact opposite. It's the exact opposite. I'll give you an example. One of the businesses that I know that's in this space, what they do is their customer type it's called Zen Stays. You can go look them up. But their customer type is people that are really into yoga, into meditation, into that type of lifestyle, right? And so what they did was instead of having, because they're operating in multifamily buildings, so there's only so much room. And what they did was instead of having a kitchen table, they took that out and instead replaced it with
A water feature.
a water feature and a place to do with the yoga mats.
Mhm.
They provide the yoga mats. They provide the environment that these types of people are looking for. Now, are there like tens of millions of people traveling that are super into yoga? No, there aren't. But there are some, and they get all of them
Right.
because they built that space for them,
Right.
right? So a lot of times the thing you build is the thing you're going to attract. And so what we're saying is build the thing to attract the customer that you want, right? And then you will be the most successful. A lot of this talk you hear about, oh, well, it's so saturated in my area, or oh, there's so many short-term rentals in my area that it's a race to the bottom price wise. Like it used to be a good thing. And what they're missing is that they never took the time to decide who their customer was. So they're all very generic.
Mm-hmm.
They're all very generic.
Mm-hmm.
And the quality level is all over the place as far as what you get, right? And they don't really speak to any one customer. So of course you're competing on price, right?
Yeah, when you do that,
Of course you're competing on
that's
price.
all you got.
It's kind of like having a restaurant that has every conceivable thing on the menu. None of it's really all that great. They have tacos, but if you want the really good ones, you go to the Cantina 1511 down here.
Right.
Because that's what they do, right? They are a Mexican restaurant. This other place is selling fried chicken and everything else, and burgers and pizza and all that stuff, right?
Right.
So
the riches are in the niches.
Riches are in the niches.
Mm-hmm.
Niches or niches?
I like to rhyme.
Oh, I got you.
I like the rhyme.
Well, you could say riches are in the niches.
The riches are in the niches?
I guess not.
Okay.
I guess not. So that's the big thing. And
Yes.
and that's, if you think about it, that's true in any business. If any successful business that you can think of, they know who their clients are. Yep. And they built that business for those people, right? And that's pretty much all we're saying.
Yep. And that is the secret sauce in this business.
That really is the secret sauce.
It
So
really is.
That brings us to section 3. So now we get to talk about property. And section 3 is literally choosing the best property.
Right. And in your workbook, you're going to see that there are 3 important factors that go into when you are looking for a property. Now, remember,
what you're really looking for is a location.
This property is not for you.
That's true. That's true.
Okay. So when you're thinking about finding a property, you need to put your customer glasses on, right? Now you're looking through the lens of your customer, right? So think about that when you are considering everything about the property. And there's 3 really important factors when you are choosing a property, and they're in your workbook here. So the first one is housing type, meaning a house, apartment, a townhouse, that kind of thing. What type of property are you looking for? Housing type. Number 2 is beds, baths, and kitchens. Beds, baths, and kitchens, because you'll need to consider those things. And then number 3 is the exterior amenities. We're going to be talking about that. Like, does it have a pool? Does it have a hot tub?
Is there a gym?
Is there a gym? Is there a backyard? Is it a waterfront property? That kind of thing. Exterior amenities. So number 1 is housing type. Number 2 is beds, baths, and kitchens. And number 3 is exterior amenities.
Right. And don't forget, you're shopping for someone else.
Yes. Your customer glasses.
Unless your customer just happens to be who you are, you really have to put yourself in the shoes of that customer. And that's part of it that I see as well. Is a lot of times when people are trying to, if you've got one of these things, do whatever you want. Right. But if your goal is to have many of these,
right. This is the business.
The business itself is going to serve the same client type across its entire portfolio, right? In fact, you really need 3 client types, but you need 3 that are similar enough that they can be served by the same property type. And here's what I mean by that. If you say, hey, my avatar is single, business travelers that are, mid-level management, they're traveling alone. They're coming to town for work. Like here in Charlotte, we're a big banking center. So they're probably working uptown somewhere in one of the banks, right? This type of person doesn't need a 4-bedroom house. Right. They need probably a 1-bedroom, possibly 2-bedroom. They probably want a place that has an office because they're probably doing some work from home type situation. They need a smaller space. So this type of person is actually, I would go shopping for 1-bedroom apartments for this person. I'll be leasing up 1-bedroom apartments for this type of person, maybe even studios. And then I got to think, okay, well, what other avatar would work in that same kind of space? Well, you can't say, well, my second avatar is families with children and pets.
All right.
Because one bedroom apartments don't work very well for families with children and pets, but they do work very well for traveling nurses, right? So you want to combine these avatars into a consistent property type that you're looking at, and that's what we were talking about when we said housing type. Like, for example, with our families with children and pets, we actually look for houses with fenced in backyards, and that's how we stay booked, right? Because that's what those people are actually looking for. And then we put the pack and play and all the other kind of stuff in there, right?
Right. So what do they value?
What do they value?
What kind of space would they value most?
Right. And it doesn't have to be uptown. It doesn't have to have a great walk score. They're driving the minivan anyway.
Exactly.
Right. But if I were serving business travelers that were coming to uptown Charlotte, for example, then I probably would want to be closer to the city. I would probably want to have a really good walk score, meaning, hey, I can walk across the street to the bar after work. I can, depending on who that person is, right? Do they want that, right? What do they want to be close to, and that kind of thing. So it's all about, back to that. It all ties back to who your customer is, and then choosing the property type for them.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the after you have thought about what housing type, the next thing is, how many bedrooms do you think that you might need? And not just that, when you're thinking about beds, is we really need to be mindful of how big the bedroom is and what type of bed will fit in there.
Right.
Because if you can only fit a queen size bed in that bedroom, like that's as big as that space is, then you have left out a large segment of the population, right? Because me and John are not sleeping in a queen size bed together. There's just no way that the two of us, I mean, we are very tall people. So you've left out really tall people, and nobody's going to complain about a bed being too big.
That's true. Yeah.
First of all.
So we always try to find places where we can fit king beds in the bedrooms.
At least a king size bed and like one small nightstand. So when you're looking at a property, a king size bed is about 85 inches wide and 85 inches long, thereabouts. There's some wiggle room there, right? And then you want a good size nightstand of about 15 to 20 inches. So now I know how big the space really needs to be. So you need to think about that when you look at the bedroom and consider the bedroom, right? So, and does your space even need a bedroom? Maybe your customer would be comfortable in a studio, and you put the bed in there. Hopefully it's a king size bed, and then there's a sofa at the end of the bed, for example, right? So the number of bedrooms, you need to consider the number of bedrooms. You need to consider the number of bathrooms that you have available. If you're serving a family and there's a couple and 2 children, are they teenagers? Because if they are, they're probably going to need a separate bathroom, right? So a separate bathroom for the couple and a separate bathroom for the children. Are they going to be staying for a long time? That's another thing to consider, because if they are, then they're going to need more space. If you are serving families with young children, they're more likely to need a bathtub. So you need to look for the bathtub in there, whereas the older children don't really need a bathtub, right? So the beds, the baths, the kitchen. Is your customer going to value being able to cook in the kitchen, right? Are they going to want all those pots and pans and spatulas and all those things that you have in your own kitchen? Are they because they're going to be staying for a while and they will really value having a kitchen to cook in? Like a lot of our spaces get people come to our spaces for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and they're going to be having their extended family over to the property, so they really want to be able to cook in that space, right? So we serve the insurance clients who have fire or water damage in their house, and this is their temporary home away from home, right? So they want that dishwasher, that full stove and microwave and really regular size refrigerator. They want that space,
Counter space.
counter space
You've
to
now
cook
got more
in.
things in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So think about your customer and what they would value in terms of a kitchen as well. Maybe they're not going to be cooking there. They're a business traveler. They're going to be out all day. They're they're probably going to walk down to a bar or restaurant to go get their meal, right? So thinking about what kitchen, maybe they don't need a full kitchen, maybe just a kitchenette would be valuable to them. So that's the second thing to consider. And then finally is the exterior amenities. You want to talk about those?
Yeah, so a lot of this is due, like for example, one of the apartment buildings that we're in Greensboro, North Carolina, it has a gym, and and actually the client type we serve up there is a little bit different than the one we serve in Charlotte. It tends to be more work travelers in that area, and that's who we're attracting often, and they value having the gym. They do. A lot of them will, and we will advertise that there's a gym. So because there's a gym, you tend to attract people that value a gym, right? There's a pool there that's something in the summer, but that's for our families with children that come to that area as well because they value the pool, right? So it's these external things that go along with the property a lot of times that you want to say, is that something worth paying for one thing, right?
Will my customer value
and then
that?
will my customer value it?
Mhm.
It always comes back to that. So it's oftentimes looking for the exterior amenities that they're looking for. Like for example, if you are truly going to do vacation rentals and you want them to be beach vacation rentals, then now you're thinking about, okay, what is it waterfront? What other does it have a dock if it's on a lake type stuff, right? It's those types of things that I'm looking for as far as exterior amenities that aren't physically inside the property.
Right.
And I will point out in Charlotte, one of the exterior amenities that we have in the houses is those fenced in backyards that I mentioned earlier.
Because of our avatar.
Because of our avatar. So that's a big, huge amenity to someone with pets, which is who we tend to attract.
Yep.
Right. And so even though you may have a 3-2 house that's right next to ours, well, ours has the fenced in backyard and yours doesn't. And then we get the client and you don't. So a lot of times it's not like, again, like I said, this is not like real estate where like a 3-2 is a 3-2. You could have two different properties right next to each other, and just based on the amenities that they have, one will attract one type of client and one might attract the other type.
Right. And that's why we put in the pack and play, the high chair, the stroller, the dog bowls, is so that we can attract that type of customer. And as soon as that customer sees all of those things, right, they see the picture of the fenced in backyard and the little patio and the picture of the high chair, we set it up, and the picture of the pack and play in our pictures, they're going to be like, oh, that place is for me. They've considered me. I'm going to choose them. Even though I have to pay a little bit more, I value those things enough to pay a little bit more than this other property who doesn't have any of those things, right? So those are the things to consider. And remember, when you're looking for property, it's not for you. It's for your customer. So you put your customer avatar glasses on and look at it through the lens of your customer. But you got to identify who that customer is first, right? And that's the secret sauce. So now let's talk about, now that we have found the right location, right? We've found what type of place we're looking for. We're looking for a studio or a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom, 2-bath house. We've considered all of these things. Now what do we do? Now we're going to take you through how to find places like that. And the best place, the first thing that we tell people to do is to go look on Zillow, go to Zillow and find a point of interest. Now, a point of interest is the reason that your customer is coming to your location, right? Why are they coming? So if they are business travelers here for a training, and they are, maybe they're in the banking district or the banking business, and they're coming to like a Wells Fargo or a Bank of America, for example, then they probably want to be near that location that they're coming to, right? So there's some conference centers that business travelers like to go to, right? Maybe you are serving the medical traveler who is coming for cancer treatment, and you have a local cancer specialty hospital. Maybe that's why they're coming, right? So points of interest like that, that's what we call a point of interest. Why are they coming? It could be your hospitals. It could be your colleges. It could be your universities. It could be your business district. Maybe it could be the airport. Maybe they're flying in. Your customers are flying in. What other points of interest can you think about?
Did you mention sports stadiums?
I didn't. No, we do have a lot of the Panthers. Well, they try to play, bless them. Oh, bless them. They didn't have a very good season. But maybe you have a really great sports team, football team.
Right. I mean, that could be your client avatar. It could be people coming for sporting events. And that's not the only thing that goes on in Bank of America Stadium. It's also concerts. It's all those types of other things that happen
event travelers
when it's not football season and when it is. Right. So that could be a point of interest. If you have a convention center, did you mention that one?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's looking for those points of interest. And I will say that even if you've lived in a town for a long time and you think you know it really well,
oh, that's true.
You'll be surprised when you start looking at all the other things that you just not interested in normally that are there. And sometimes you find this out after you're operating, actually.
Yeah.
People, because we always ask what brings you to town, right? And they'll say, oh, we're doing X, Y, and Z. Like, so for example, here's one that wasn't on our radar. Going back to the very first one we had in the basement, people started coming because we didn't, be honest with you, when we started, we didn't think about who our client type was. We just knew we had a basement. Right. And so the market kind of told us who they were. Right. And who we tended to attract a lot of the times was families actually coming to our area because there's it's called Extreme Ice
Center.
And people come from, well, all over the country, really. There, it's an ice hockey center. So people come there for ice hockey traveling sports teams. And we just didn't even know it was there because we don't play hockey.
Right.
And we don't watch hockey, and hockey's not our thing, but it is other people's things. So it was something that surprised us, that was literally right down the road, that we drive by all the time.
No idea.
And it never occurred to us that, oh, that's actually a point of interest for someone. So then that became one of our client types that we were serving. And then we started advertising to attract those people. And then we just got more and more of them. So yeah, the points of interest are huge. And look around, because you'll find points of interest that you didn't even know were there because you just never considered it before.
Yep. Right. So one of the things that we like to do is we like to get on Zillow. And when you get on Zillow, you can type in your point of interest. And then, are you going to show them how to show them about the area and using Zillow or?
I didn't plan to do that.
Oh, okay.
No.
Well, that's one of the things that we like to do is go on Zillow and just type in your point of interest. And on Zillow, you can actually measure distance from your point of interest, and then you'll have a radius. And one of the things that we tell people to do
Do
is,
you mean Zillow or Google Maps?
well, we start on Zillow and then use Google Maps.
Oh, I didn't know you could do that on Zillow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe it's Google Maps that you do.
Yeah, you measure distance on Google Maps.
Oh, it's
That's
Google
why I
Maps.
asked.
Oh, got
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, on then you go on Google Maps and you can do the measure distance feature and find your radius, because one of the things that we usually tell people to do is to start at least close to where you are, within 30 minutes or an hour of where you are, because you are going to have to go to the property. If you don't have anyone to do it for you, especially in the beginning, you're going to have to go to the property for one reason or another, because something always happens, especially when you're first getting started. Try to be as close to the property as possible, within 30 minutes or an hour. So you can use that measure distance feature in Google Maps and come up with a radius, a 2 to 3 mile radius around your point of interest. And now you have a really great area to look in, right? So once you've gotten your radius, you put your point of interest in Google Maps, you've gotten your radius. Now we can really filter through what property types we're looking for. So because we already know what we're looking for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment, for example, or we're looking for a studio apartment, for example, or we're looking for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath house, for example. You already know what you're looking for. Now you just need to find that area around your point of interest. So now we know where we're looking and what we're looking for, right? Now, the next thing to consider is the area itself, right? Because if people are coming in from out of town, they're going to be driving by through the area.
Yeah, it's like, how do they
right?
get there?
Right.
Right. That's
So-
something that we learned along the way. Was it wasn't all just about the property itself.
Right.
It was, well,
The area.
how is that area, and what do you have to drive through to get there?
Yeah.
Because that's actually going to be the first impression of the property.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Is what you have to drive by.
Yeah.
So I think here it's going to be important to talk about Class A type neighborhoods, Class B type neighborhoods, Class C type neighborhoods, and what the differences are and with those types of neighborhoods, right? So a Class A type neighborhood is really upscale. Most of the people own the property. There's few rentals. There's really high. People really value their property. The yards are mowed. The exterior of the buildings are really well cared for. Everything's really nicely landscaped, right? There's no broken down cars. There's no graffiti. It's a really upscale Class A type neighborhood, right? So that's
It's often new construction.
yeah. New constructions is really prime for like Class A type places, right? Class B type neighborhoods are, maybe there's some rentals, maybe like, I don't know, 20-30% type rentals in the neighborhood, but it's still very manicured. The exterior of the homes are well taken care of. There's not very many broken down cars on the side of the road in the area, right? There's not much graffiti in the area. So that's a Class B type neighborhood. In a Class C type neighborhood, however, it's probably more the 50-50, right? It's more the 50% own and 50% rent.
Yeah. Tends to be a little older area.
Tends to be a little bit older. The most people keep up their lawns. You may have a couple of people who don't mow their lawns. You may have a few cars on the side of the road with flat tires, for example. They don't have anywhere else to put them, right? But the car's got a flat. The exterior of the homes are pretty well cared for the majority of the spaces of the properties. Maybe a couple of payday loan cashing places. What is your customer going to see as safe? That's really the question that you have to ask yourself.
Yeah, a lot of times.
Yeah.
Because you don't want D or F.
Right. No.
That's
we
your
just
that's
don't
your
do that.
that's your kind of war zone site places,
Yeah.
right?
We just don't.
So we would say, at
Don't do
least C-class type neighborhood. But again, it depends on who you're serving. What are they expecting?
Yeah, it's
Right. And where are they coming from? Because that's one of the things we talk about when we're coming up with our avatars. What's their hometown? Right? Are they city dwellers themselves, or are they coming from the country to Dallas, Texas, for example? This happened recently with one of the coaching clients that we have currently. He's actually in a very nice building in Dallas, Texas. However, Dallas, Texas is a large city, and there's vagrants around that building. That's the way it is. And so occasionally you get people that come from other type areas that aren't used to this, and their first impression is, hey, I got to walk past a guy who's peeing on the sidewalk.
Right.
Type stuff, right? And so knowing the area and knowing what your client expects, because for us
That's
it would
what
be
it
like,
is.
okay, well, we have that in Charlotte too. It's a city. These types of things happen.
Yep.
Yes,
You're in
there's
the city.
traffic and noise. That's what you get
Right.
in the city, right?
Mhm.
But part of it is it like Wendy said, you can't really ever say, hey, it's a safe area, because
Right.
crime happens everywhere.
Right.
But it's kind of like you know it when you see it type thing.
It's the impression
And
that
it's
you're
the impression that you're giving
Yes.
to,
Mhm.
especially someone who isn't local.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's all about the impression that they're going to get on their way to the property.
Correct.
That's really what it's about,
Yep.
right? So, and that's when you get bad reviews, right? Is when you've got a
person who expects one thing and walks into something else.
Yes, that's a really great way to put it.
And it can go both ways.
That's true.
By the way.
That's true.
Yeah. Because you might just be saying, oh, well, I'll just do these in Class A areas. But the problem becomes then that now if you're trying to serve a budget customer in a high-end area, they don't appreciate that it's in a high-end area. And all of a sudden now they just view you as expensive. It's kind of like someone who would walk. Well, here's a good example in the hospitality industry. People that stay at the Waldorf Astoria don't want to be in a red roof because it's the red roof. But people that stay in the red roof don't want to stay at the Waldorf Astoria because why would I pay so much more? I'm just sleeping there. Right. And so it's expectation. And when things go wrong is when people don't know what your brand is because you're not telling them. You're not telling them that, hey, we're budget, or hey, we're mid-scale, or hey, we're a high-end property. And what will happen is you'll have someone who's expecting Class A that walks into your Class B or C property. And
Yep.
by the way, on the way in, see all these other things that tell them this is the red roof.
Yep.
Right. And then now they're complaining, or vice versa. You have someone who's expecting budget, but walks into your space, and now all of a sudden it just seems expensive because they don't really place any value on what you're providing, right? So it can go either way,
Right.
for sure.
Yep. So now that we have a really good idea of what we're looking for and where we're looking for it, now you can really start to explore that area. And there's lots of different ways to explore the area online, right? So, but really, the best way to do it is to drive around, right?
Yeah, go drive there.
Yeah, and park somewhere
Park somewhere and
walk,
because
right?
you will see things that you
Yes.
just don't see driving
Yes,
or
right.
can't see on Google Street View
Yes,
because they weren't there when the Google car drove by,
right.
right?
Yep.
And I would say even go there at different times of the day. Go during the day, during the week, go during the day on a weekend, go there at night.
Yep.
And you'll see that some areas drastically change on the weekend versus the weekdays. They drastically change daylight versus nighttime. So you want to get a really good sense of all those types of things, like what kind of area is this, right?
Mhm.
And then I think what you were starting to go to is now you can start identifying our target properties.
Yep.
So there's lots of ways to acquire property. It could be, you could be looking for a house, you could be looking for a studio apartment, you could be looking for X, Y, and Z. We alluded to this before. It's not like you have to go buy these houses. So you may be driving around looking for rent signs.
We'll talk about that at
Right.
the end.
So
yeah,
I'm just saying, if you're building a potential property list, you need to know what you're looking for.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
Yeah, very true. Yeah. So we do actually have a potential property list template.
Yeah. It's
and
also, there's a link in the workbook.
There's a link in the workbook for that. Yeah. Yeah. So now that we know where we're looking and what we're looking for, let's talk about in section 4 of the workbook is doing your due diligence. And in this section, we're going to be talking about the will it work in my area? And let's talk a little bit about ordinances. So we're going to talk about ordinances, like the laws governing short-term rentals in the area. And we're going to walk you through how we analyze these properties, right? Like, will it work? How do I know if?
Yeah, that's always one of the biggest questions. It's like,
if
okay,
I'm make money.
I've picked this avatar. Right. How do I know I'm going to make money?
Right.
Right.
So that's what we're going to be talking about in section 4. And this is a really, really great strategy. So let's talk a little bit about ordinances first, right? So there's different levels of ordinance, right? So let's start very broad first, and then we're going to get specific. So when we talk about ordinances, your state may have ordinances governing short-term rentals, right? So we've got state ordinances.
Yeah, we're talking about laws and rules.
Laws and rules, yeah.
Right.
And then your county or your city may have some ordinances governing short-term rentals. And then more specifically, the neighborhood HOA may have some ordinances governing short-term rentals. So let's start with the state. And why don't you say a little bit about the state?
Yeah, so oftentimes at the state level, it's actually helpful rather than hurtful. So there are some states in the country that have basically said local municipalities can't make rules on short-term rentals. So that's actually something that I believe certain areas of Florida are that way. Here in North Carolina, we just had a Supreme Court case where the city of Wilmington they passed some pretty restrictive ordinances on where and how and when you could do short-term rentals. And they took them to the state Supreme Court. And they basically said, no, that's a power that's reserved for the state itself, and you can't actually do that. So that's an example of something that could happen at the state level that actually affects you no matter where you are in the state, right? And then the next level down from that is more commonly what people are worried about or know about, and that's your city or county ordinances, those tend to be either they don't exist at all, or they have it really boils down to what is the definition of a short-term rental. So when you're reading any kind of regulation or you're trying to research regulation, the number one thing I like to do is just simply go to Google and say Charlotte, North Carolina short-term rental ordinance, for example, Dallas, Texas short-term rental ordinance, Los Angeles city or county, because there's two different things, California short-term rental ordinance, right? And I want to go read the actual ordinance. I don't want to read newspaper articles,
Right.
because remember, the people writing the newspaper articles still think it's an Airbnb. They've confused the marketplace with who's coming. And what you'll read is oftentimes, well, Airbnb is banned. Well, it's
Right.
not.
Right.
What it typically is they're limiting the length of time someone can stay, meaning they may say, well, you can't rent a place for less than 28 days, for example. It doesn't mean you can't list it on Airbnb. It just means that your minimum night stay has to be 28. And there's a customer type for that. We serve one of them.
Yes, we do.
It's people that are moving to the area and building a house. We get those people all the time. It takes 6 months to build a house. So even if that
Longer
were
now after
yeah,
COVID.
yeah, even longer sometimes. But even if insurance claims, somebody has a fire at their property or their pipes burst or whatever, and they have to go somewhere else, usually that's an extended period of time, at least a month. And usually they always extend. So they're usually there longer than that even, right?
Yep.
But we still get those, and they don't know where to look except for they go to the marketplaces. So they may find us on an Airbnb, right? So you kind of want to read the ordinance yourself. And a lot of times what you'll find is if your minimum stay is greater than 28, 30, or 31, those are the most common, then by technical law definition, they don't even consider you a short-term rental. Right. So that's always a play that you can almost make everywhere. There's very few exceptions to that, Baltimore being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
There are some cities where you really have to be careful about what you're doing. But the point is, read the actual ordinance yourself
On a .gov website.
on a .gov website.
Yes.
Right. Not on CNN.com, not
Right.
on Fox Local.
Right.
Not on whatever.
Yes.
Actually go read the ordinance yourself, or enlist an attorney to tell you what the actual rules are in the law, because those things are written by attorneys often, right? I like reading them for fun, but if you don't,
I do not.
have somebody with a legal background actually look at those and then tell you, okay, is there any restriction currently? And if there is, what is it? Because often the ordinance aren't really telling you what you can't do.
Right.
They're really telling you how you can do it.
Yes.
And oftentimes that's like, okay, I need a license. Okay, fine. That's the process we need to go through. And then the final one would be, and I would just avoid these altogether, to be honest with you. So it's your homeowners association rules, it's your condo association rules, it could be the rules of an apartment building that you're trying to get units in, right? So you don't want to, for example, spend a ton of money setting up a short-term rental in an HOA, only to find out later that, oh, well, they restrict rentals. For example, our neighborhood has a minimum 12-month lease.
Right.
So you simply can't lease, license, otherwise for money, allow people to stay there for a period of time less than 12 months. So we don't do it in our neighborhood, basically, right? And then and here's the thing to know, even if there isn't currently a restriction on it in say the HOA or the condo association you're in, it's very easy for them to change those rules, right? So I would avoid them altogether, actually. So you just don't run into that. You don't risk that to your business. The only exception to that I can think of is perhaps a community that they're all short-term rentals.
Mm-hmm. Like at the beach.
Like this isn't uncommon. Like like where we are, we're 3 hours from Myrtle Beach. So there are condos, whole condo buildings in the Myrtle Beach area where, well, they're all short-term rentals.
Right.
That's what everybody does with them. So the rules aren't likely to change because everybody's on the same page.
Right.
So in those kind of situations, okay, fine. But in most of the situations, I just say avoid HOAs and condo associations and those types of things altogether.
Yes.
Altogether.
Yes. All right. Well, you ready to get down to the really good stuff?
Oh, I thought we did some really good stuff already, but there's more really good stuff.
This is more really good stuff. So now that we have looked at the laws or the ordinances, now let's really talk about some numbers here. And we are actually going to take you through a demonstration on how we analyze if a property will make money. So let's get into that. And I got to put my glasses on for this because I gotta read stuff.
You got to be able to see.
I got to be able to read stuff.
All right, so I'm going to bring this over to this tab here, and that's Google Maps. But I'm actually going to take you, and some of you may be familiar with this, and some of you may not. You've been looking in Detroit, have you? Okay. It's .co. AirDNA.co
Yes.
is what I'm looking for.
Here it is.
So some of you may be familiar with this. What AirDNA is, they're a company that aggregates data from two of the biggest marketplaces that most of us are probably familiar with. There is Airbnb and Vrbo. And what they do is they try to pull every reservation for every unit that's listed on one or the other of those platforms and tell you what the revenue is for those. In other words, what are they getting per night? What's their occupancy rate? What's their overall revenue for the year, right? The problem with this data is that 70-80% of it is trash. The good news is it's all the data. The bad news is it's all the data, meaning these rates up here. So for example, this is Detroit, Michigan. It's telling me the average daily rate is $173, but it tells me nothing about the quality of that unit. It tells me nothing about who's staying there. Are these people doing it professionally? Is it a room? Is it a house? What is it? Right. And the problem with that is that we've already established that the customer type that you're serving is actually probably the most important thing. And two houses right next to each other can be very different as far as who they serve, right? Even though they're both 2-bedroom houses, right? So with that said, I'm going to tell you that I would mostly ignore these hard numbers in here. So ignore this 173, ignore this 50%. But what you can see is trends, because every market usually has trends. So I can say that, okay, it looks to me that February generally is the low month for Detroit, and July generally is the high month for Detroit. That's also ironically very true here in Charlotte, North Carolina as well. Occupancy seems to follow that, low in January, high in July. Revenue seems to be lower in January than in July, like across the board, across everybody, right? But that doesn't tell me anything because all these properties are kind of mixed in together and it's kind of just an average. And at least I got the trends, right? So that's an important thing to know. What point am I entering the market? Because every month is not the same. Here in Charlotte, for example, July, we tried to survive. I'm not July. In July, we do very, very well, actually.
I was about to say.
June, July, August, we do very, very well. And then September, things drop off quite a bit because, well, we serve families with children and pets, and kids go back to school in August. So September it falls off for us. And then gradually, November is going to be a good month for us because we've now got Thanksgiving and people starting to travel for the holidays, and then December, and then January it falls off the cliff again because everybody just had all these holidays and they're not traveling anymore, right? So knowing when you're entering can help you actually prepare for the uneven cash flow that's going to come with this business, right? And then there's no bad time to start. I will say that too. If you start in the slow season, that's great because it gives you time to establish that it's there. It gives you time to actually get some reviews. It gives you time to kind of get the property up and running so that when high season does come, you're available and you're there, right?
And you got some reviews.
And you've got reviews, right? If you start in the high season, that's not a bad thing either. It just means, okay, now I'm starting in the high season. I know that I'm getting more revenue than I normally would. And I know this slow part's coming. So I'm going to put a part of that aside so that it's not so bad when I get to January,
And
right?
we can help you with that.
Like I actually made my money back in July. And now I'm, defending it in January. It's kind of the way we look at it.
I like to do it in the off season because you get to work out all the bugs.
That is true. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
there's always going to be bugs.
There is no bad time to start. It's just knowing when you start, because that way you can plan.
Yeah.
You can plan for what you're doing.
And we can definitely help you out with that. Planning.
Right. Now let's talk about, so if I can't believe these numbers here and I can't do anything with that, right? What can I do? What can I do exactly? Well, I'm going to give you an example. And by the way, AirDNA is paid. It does have this general stuff. You can sign up for free, but you'll notice there's a lot of these things are locked because I don't pay for the data from Detroit, Michigan. However, they do have an unlock market here that I'm going to use for the demonstration. And this is Santa Monica, California. And now you can see that, okay, it's actually, giving me some more information now. It thinks it's a B+ area. It's telling me, here's the map of Santa Monica down here. And not sure what that was all about. Here's the map of Santa Monica down here. And each one of these little purple and blue dots is a listing. So it's telling me that this particular listing is a 1-bedroom, 1-bath. It's on Airbnb. And that's supposed to be a yearly revenue number of 1.1K. And the reason it's showing that is because this place has actually only been available in the last 365 days, 21 of them. But it's being averaged into that mix of everybody else. But I would not see, what I'm really looking for is comps. And I would consider, if I were in the 1-bedroom, 1-bath market in Santa Monica, I would not consider this a comp because it hasn't been available for at least 300 days. So that's one of my criteria. And the next criteria is going to be, I'm actually going to click into the listing and see if it still exists, because sometimes it doesn't. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go right down here and say, how many reviews does it have?
Oh, it's only got 6.
So it's only got 6, but it's because it's only been available 20 days. So I'm actually going to eliminate this as a comp and say that number doesn't matter to me, right? So let's go find another one. That one's only been available 118 days, 85 days, 31 days. You can see how this can be tedious, but it's necessary to find true comps. 245 days. I'm looking for a 300.
Oh, you just passed one.
I did?
Yeah.
You know which little dot it was?
I have no idea. Oh, there it is.
Here's one. Now, this is a private room,
Oh, my.
right? But I'm going to use it as an example because, well, it's been at least available for 333 days. So I'm going to go click through the listing now. And I'm going to attempt to not critique it.
Oh my.
But I can also see that they have 571 reviews on this property.
Wow.
And if I go down and look at the reviews themselves, I can see that, okay, they have some in November, October. In fact, I can view all of them. And what I'm really looking for is, do they have a review at least once a month for the last year? And it looks like they actually do.
At least once a month for the last year?
Yes, because I want to confirm that people are actually staying there.
Right, yeah.
Right?
Right.
Not that it was just available, but that people are actually staying there, because now I can start believing some of this data over here on AirDNA, meaning this monthly revenue number that was over here,
Gotcha.
right? And so I can take that and say, okay, I'm going to take that monthly revenue number, divide that by 12, And now I have an idea of at least on average what this property generates a month,
Mhm.
right? So you want to look for a like kind property. You want to look for a property that's been available for at least 360 or 300 days of the last year. And you want to then go into the listing and see, do they have reviews for that entire year or entire period of time? And now you've got a property that's likely a comp. And then I'm going to take that yearly revenue number that's listed over there. So it's this number on the far right over here. And I'm going to divide that by 12 and say, okay, that's generally on average what they're getting. Now, I already know they get more in July than they get in January. But if I can start looking at this as a yearly revenue thing, I can now start getting some numbers, at least what I can expect over a 12-month period, right? And then the next step is going to be when I click through into the listing, what I'm looking for is now I'm evaluating its quality. In other words, is this place better than the property I'm potentially looking at? Is it worse than the property I'm potentially looking at? Or is it on par with the property I'm potentially looking at?
Like stainless steel appliances.
It could be those amenities we talked about,
The
right?
amenities.
Like a place with a pool, and my place doesn't have a pool, then it's not a comp, right?
Right.
It's probably better than mine, right?
Washer and dryer inside the unit.
Do they have professional photos? Do they have multiple listings? Are they doing it professionally? Are they on and on? And what I'm trying to get a sense of is I want a top of the market, I want a middle of the market, and I want a bottom of the market. And I know that if you follow what we tell you, you're not going to be at the bottom of the market. You're at least going to be in the middle and probably more towards the top, right? So now I can get a range of what I can expect on the low end, on the high end, and somewhere in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And then all I need to do is say, okay, the property that I'm considering, which one of those is it actually comparable to? And now I can get really detailed into what I can actually expect. So this is actually the Burger King method. So what Burger King does is they wait for McDonald's to put up a location and do all the research on whether that's a good location or not. And then they simply set up shop across the street, right? And this is kind of the same type of play, but because of the nature of how this works, you really do have to go down into here in each one,
Mm-hmm.
and there's quite a few in here, right?
But you could get a good sense of, you know, the majority of the market by doing this. And I would say, what, like 3 or 4 or 5 on the high end, find 3 or 4 or 5 comps on the high end, 3, 4 or 5 comps in the middle, and then 3, 4 or 5 on the low end, right? And that would give you a really great sense of the market, and you can have some really good confidence in these numbers that you're finding. And you know, that's going to tell you whether or not you make money. And you know, AirDNA is a great tool, and it's paid. You pay for I believe it's the zip code, but it's $40,
Right.
and that's a minimal investment in my opinion, to pay to get such great data. But realize that the majority of this data you're not going to be using. It's not relevant to you, right? So if you follow the procedure that John just showed you, you're going to be making a $40 investment, yes, but the data that you are going to get is going to be priceless, in my opinion.
Yeah, and keep in mind that the way they determine, and this is very important to know, the way they determine whether, well, how do they know what those people made? Well, what they do is they watch their calendars, and they say, hey, this place here was $150 a night, for example, this Wednesday, and now it's not available. They make the assumption it was sold at $150, which isn't always the case, by the way, because all the time we'll have somebody ask us, hey, can we get a discount? We'll send them a special offer. So it's not the actual advertised nightly rate, but the calendar gets blocked, but Airbnb has no way of knowing that.
Right.
Or we don't sell it on Airbnb or Vrbo. A lot of times we get a direct booking, and those prices are different too.
Right.
Right. So, but all it sees is that, hey, it was available. Now it's not available. It assumes it was sold. Right. But if you do those 3 things, if you look for properties that were available for more than 300 days, if you look for a ton of reviews on the platform like that, that minimizes that noise to the point where you can kind of, it's probably still not exact, but it's going to be really close.
Yeah. But I really like doing the height of the market, the middle, and the
Yeah,
low.
you need to know that.
Right.
Because comps aren't comps. AirDNA, all it knows is, hey, it's a 3-bedroom.
Right.
It doesn't know that it's a 3-bedroom.
Yeah, you're really
with like really good design and good photos
Right.
versus one who, you know, they got rid of their old couch and put it in there.
Right. Yeah,
Right.
you
And
can
bought the
always
rest of
tell.
it on IKEA. Right. Like those are two
Right.
different
Right.
client types, two different
And looking at the reviews,
property
is-
potentials.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, and then looking at the reviews, that's really that's really key. I think that's really great, valuable information, right? When you're looking to get started and go into a market. So the last section, we are down to the last section already. So in section 5, okay, now this is going to be a really, really great section because we have been talking about the getting started in the business, right? So let's talk about how to even acquire the property. So a lot of people may be coming into this space as a real estate investor, and if that's you, then listen up because we've got some really great, valuable information for you. Now, if you're coming into it as not a real estate investor, but you're interested in, how can I, get started in the short-term rental space, pay attention. This is for you too, because we've got some really great strategies here. And what we're going to be talking about next is if renting the space versus owning the space, because the way that you control the property has everything to do with it. It has everything to do with how you control the property, because that's really what we're looking at, how to control the property. And really, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't
That's
matter.
the big secret, actually.
That it just doesn't matter because this is not real estate. This is not a real estate business. You have to really switch your mind here, make that perspective shift that we talked about in the beginning. This is not real estate. Okay. Whether you own the property or you're leasing the property, it doesn't matter, because here's what's going to happen. You can purchase the property. That is fantastic. And you can own the property. But what you really need to realize is you're going to be owning the property in a separate business entity than you are with your short-term rental business. And you actually do a really great job of explaining this, I think.
Yeah. So here's the thing, and it's not even specifically that. Like, it's not, hey, go have an LLC for your thing and then have another one for your business. It's really more mindset. I think you actually probably should, but there's, tax things you got to think about and all these other kind of things. But here's where I actually see people make a mistake, and I'm gonna go back to the restaurant thing again,
Okay.
because it's easier to see. So, and this is a true story. So there was a local, semi-local restaurant here that was pretty popular, and they made the news because they were shutting down. And the reason they were giving for shutting down was that the space they were renting, the landlord had raised their rents, and they were no longer able to operate. They were no longer, the rent was too high. They were no longer able to operate. And actually, a realtor that I know popped in on that thread, because this was posted on Facebook. Like, isn't this a shame, right? And she said, well, this is why I always advise my clients that own restaurants or businesses to purchase the property, because it will keep this from happening, right? And in this particular case, someone else piped in and said, well, the story's kind of written like evil, greedy landlord, but in actuality, what they're asking for rent is actually market rent, and they just haven't raised it in so many years. And that's what that kind of space actually goes for. It's not an unfair rent, right? So it wasn't that they were trying to get rid of them. It's just that now the property generates more. There's inflation. We all know this inflation thing, right? So rents go up over time. They just do. But what I think this person was missing was that had that restaurant purchased that building, they may have been able to stay and operate as a restaurant at the expense of a bad real estate deal. Because you got to consider that space, say it rents for $2,500, the fact that you're paying a $1,000 mortgage on it doesn't make it cheaper, because you have to realize that you're giving up $1,400 in rent, potentially 24 minus 1,000, and then there are other expenses, but I'm doing quick math, right? And you got to consider that, okay, actually what was happening there in that case, had they owned the building, is their real estate business that holds that piece of property would have actually been subsidizing the restaurant business, and the restaurant business actually wasn't profitable in that location as a whole, right? And so it only became apparent because they actually were renting it. So they actually had a business that wasn't profitable, but they didn't realize it. And they wouldn't have realized it had they owned the property, right? Because what that business really needs to do is move to a different location that's cheaper, or generate more income or something, right? Be a better restaurant, unfortunately. And so if I take that back now to what we're doing in the real estate business, a big mistake I see people make is they'll go buy a piece of real estate thinking, oh, I'm going to put a short-term rental in it, and that's going to justify because it makes more rent, right? And what they're failing to realize is that lost opportunity cost for the thing would have only rents for $1,500 and you pay $300,000 for it. That's a bad rental deal in my mind, right? So don't get caught up in, oh, well, it's, I'm making actually a bad real estate deal, and I'm putting this business in it that's now subsidizing, actually real estate subsidizing the short-term rental business, or perhaps the short-term rental business is subsidizing the real estate business, right? And you want to make sure that actually both sides of this equation are profitable. So go do a good real estate deal, then put your short-term rental in it, but only if that piece of property actually happens to be where your client wants to be, right? So that's actually why we like renting. It becomes very apparent whether you actually are profitable, and two, it's a lot easier to find a location in exactly the spot that I want, because I'm not the one that has to own it. Now my pool of available properties is anyone who's a landlord, right? And in fact, there are economies of scale if you go to, say, a multifamily unit, like say an apartment building that has 200 units in it. Well, now I can simply sign leases and get 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 of these things all in one location that has already been picked for the client type that I want. And then take that cash flow from that business. And if I want to go buy real estate, go buy real estate. They don't have to be the same thing. That's another thing I see a lot of people do. They'll say, well, I'd really like to have a beach house. I'm going to go buy a beach house, and then I'm going to short-term, make it a short-term rental for most of the year, and it'll kind of pay for itself, right? But even that beach house has a monthly rental rate that you could be getting that you're foregoing if you just simply realize that, oh, well, if I really want a beach property, I don't have to go to the beach and do that. I could set up short-term rentals, say in the city of Charlotte, let the cash flow from those then go pay for my beach house. And now I don't have to share my beach house with a bunch of renters, right?
So it's not
so
that
it's
we
separating out the two.
Don't like to own real estate. That's not it at all.
No, I think you should own real estate. In fact, you're going to need to own some real estate eventually, because this business creates so much cash flow.
Yes.
that you're going to need a place to offset all the taxes you're going to pay.
Right.
So you're going to want some real estate at some point.
Right.
If you don't have it already.
So it's not that we don't advocate owning real estate, because we do. It's just the when we own real estate is flipped.
Right. And it's,
So-
and then do I have to own the piece? Does it have to be the one that my STR is in? Maybe not. Right. They're two separate businesses.
Yes.
And make sure they're both profitable. The way you hear a lot of people say this is make sure it works as a long-term rental. So if this Airbnb thing doesn't work out,
Yes.
that's what they're kind of saying is
Right.
do a good real estate deal.
Right.
And don't depend on your short-term
Right.
rental business.
Right.
But it's really more of a, the profitability of this thing. If the short-term rental business simply can't afford to pay market rent for that property, it doesn't belong there. It doesn't. And that's just the reality of it. So you should always be thinking of it, do I do rental arbitrage or do I own? Well, your short-term rental business is really always renting, or it should be able to,
Yes.
from you. Right.
Yes. Regardless of whether you own the real estate or not. So it's not that we don't want to own real estate. It's just that we use the short-term rental business to create the cash flow that allows us to go purchase the real estate, right? So we're doing the short-term rental business first, which is producing the cash flow, which allows us to purchase real estate. And that's the order of business for us.
And you can go a lot faster because
Yeah.
now I don't need down payments. I don't need, I don't really have to take care of all the maintenance and that kind of thing. I don't have those expenses,
Right.
All these other expenses that go along with owning the real estate, just don't apply. And I can expand a lot faster. So that's one of the things that we learned early on was, hey, expand this thing.
Yes.
That should be the first step.
Yes.
Do that with the least upfront capital as possible, because having the inventory for the market and the demand is way more important than how you actually control the property. Right.
That's right. And the last thing in the workbook is a sample walkthrough worksheet that we have for you. So if you are, regardless of whether or not you're looking to purchase the property, or if you're looking to do the rental arbitrage model and lease the property, that's what rental arbitrage means, is when you lease the property long term and your short-term rental business is the tenant.
That's correct.
So that's what rental arbitrage is. Regardless of which control strategy you're using, you can still use this walkthrough worksheet, and it just gives you a list of things so you don't have to remember exactly what I'm looking for here, right? Like, is there ample parking? What is the parking situation like, right? Because some of those, that thing may be.
Yeah. What class area is it?
What-
So this
yeah.
this walkthrough worksheet is what you use when you actually go view a property.
Yes, when you go look
And
at
it's
the
meant to
property.
be looked through the lens of the customer you're
Right.
serving.
Yes.
Right.
And you can download that now. And so we hope that you found some value in the information that we just provided for you. We do have some giveaways, and if you will share this video and believe comment.
You can tag us in it, send us a
Tag us in it,
screenshot
that's
of
what it
it.
was.
However you want to make proof that, hey, you shared it.
Yes, tag us in it.
That gets you an entry.
Yeah, that will get you an entry. And there's 3 things that you can choose from. We have a listing audit. We will go through and audit your listing for you. We can do a design consultation for you. We will tell you exactly what to put inside the unit to make it really stand out in your photos. And we could give you a pricing strategy call. So John is the pricing master.
Yeah.
He's very, very good at that type of thing. So we can help you come up with a pricing strategy. So you have those 3 giveaways to choose from. All you have to do is share this video and then tag us in the comments there. So now we are going to come to the question and answer section of the live, and I'm going to need to put my glasses on for this to see if we have any questions so far. So we do have a question from LinkedIn. Does the $25,000 cover everything the first month, year? Question. Okay.
Got you. Yeah. So, one, that's just a catchy title, right? But in general, for the ones that we have done in the Charlotte market, we've spent less than that actually to get it set up. But what does that include? It includes the furnishings. It includes all the tech that we recommend that goes in the unit. We didn't talk about that on this webinar, but we only got so much time. It covers your first month's rent if that's what you're doing. It should be turnkey is actually the answer. And that should get you, and frankly, right now with the size units we're doing, there's somewhere around 1,000 to 1,500 square feet, because you really want to budget on a per square foot basis. And we would say budget $25 a square foot, and that should cover everything, including like all the things I mentioned, plus the supplies you're going to need, because you're going to need a lot of toilet paper and K-cups perhaps, and coffee and sugar, and like all the, extra linens that you need, and all the things that you, when you first set up a unit, should cover all of that. And then you should have some left over.
Unless you're doing a really upscale type place. If you're doing a really luxury type place, then you're going to want to budget more than that. I would say probably like $35 a square foot.
Okay.
For a really luxury space.
Well, you're
like
the
that.
designer. I'll let you.
I know.
But yeah, it's more of a square footage thing.
Right.
But for every single one that we've done, it's been way less than that actually. In fact, we could probably do two units for 25.
I would say that's true.
And have them be turnkey.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So
that's a good question.
That was a very good question. Do we have another question here? Let's look and see. Okay. Do you offer coaching to help me get started? Yes. Yes, we do offer coaching. If you are looking to...
you can go right here. It's shorttermrentalauthority.com/work with us.
There you go. Thank you.
That's our coaching link. It's basically going to take you there, and there's a form you can fill out and tell us what you're looking for and that kind of thing. And then we'll get together, and we coach people all the time.
All the time.
Pretty much what we do. We live on Zoom a lot.
That's pretty much what we do.
Yes. We do.
All day long. Yes.
Yes. So we've coached people from mostly the U.S. actually, mostly the United States, but some Canada, some Norway even. So some overseas, but we tend to be focused in the U.S. But yes, we do offer that as a service. We offer design and consulting services. We offer coaching. We offer, all those things that we're giving away. Sometimes it's hey, I need a pricing strategy session. Sometimes it's I need, will you please go through my listing and tell me why I'm not getting booked?
Right.
Right. That's a common thing, right? And it's not uncommon, by the way, for us to have that session and then get the feedback,
Oh yeah.
later that day that, oh wow, I just got 4 bookings.
That just happened just the other day.
It did, yeah. and that we actually enjoy that.
Funny.
That's a good thing for us.
Yep.
So when that happens, it's
well, right, because your success is our success too.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, follow that link, fill out the form, and we'd love to get back with you.
Yep. Very good. Very good. Very good. Hey, Brittany.
Brittany says, thank you for sharing. Very helpful.
Hi.
You're welcome, Brittany.
Hi, Brittany.
Brittany's good people.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming.
Well, that's all we had for today, unless there were any more questions. And we'll be doing some more of these. So join our community.
Oh, yes. The community, Facebook community, Short-Term Rental Authority.
Yeah. If you're not currently watching it there, it's the Short-Term Rental Authority at Short-Term Rental Authority on Facebook. You can also find us same name at Short-Term Rental Authority on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on TikTok.
YouTube.
You can find us on YouTube. You could be watching there.
Yeah. We do have a podcast as well.
We have a podcast every week.
Yep.
that comes out on a different topic. And then if you want to get in the Facebook community, we actually go live every Wednesday
Wednesday night.
and do just straight up Q&A, or perhaps a topic that people have been asking about that week or whatever. So if you've got more questions and you think of stuff after that and you're like, dang, I should have asked that, come by Wednesday and we'd be happy to answer that, or get on the forum, book a call with us, and we can do it one-on-one.
Yep. Excellent. Very good. Well, we hope that you got lots of value, because we dropped lots of nuggets, and you got your free workbook there. Hopefully you went to get your workbook there, and we would love to work with you if you're looking to get started in the short-term rental space, because that's what we do here at the Short-Term Rental Authority. We are your authority for all things short-term rental related, to help make you the best operator ever.
Happy Saturday.
Bye.